Welcome to this episode of A Facilitator's Journey. Today we're talking all things partnership, and I'm joined by Darren Hilton and Rich Bellars. In the conversation, we are going to cover off what does partnership mean to us? How does it work when it's not a legal entity? We talk about how to set the foundations to have a really successful partnership. We then cover off the trials, the challenges, and the tribulations. And we finish off with the quick fire questions. So settle in, get a cup of tea, and come join me on the pink chair. Hey, Richard. Hey, Darren. Welcome to the SOF podcast, A Facilitator's Journey. So the question I ask everybody, how do we know one another? I'll come to Richard first. Rich.
Well, Kirsty, I was trying to remember the year. I think it was 2007, and I was delivering a personal development workshop about living your best life, I think it was. And you attended. It's a bit of a favour, really, because you said, "Yeah, I'll come along," and you got asked some questions which seemed to have quite a good effect. And I think you've often said it was the beginning of the end of your corporate sort of career, and then the beginning of your solo career. And then we stayed in touch. It was it's been an absolute privilege to see what you've grown and burst and grown with School of Facilitation, and I guess I've been there in the wings almost all the time.
It's your fault. I speak about it in episode 5. How did I start my journey as a trainer and a facilitator in the freelance world? And it was because of the workshop I came on with you, April 2007, and I wrote an outcome that it's then April 2009, and I am an NLP coach and trainer and earn £5,000 a month. And when I wrote that down, and it was a very facetious, because Richard told me I had to have an outcome, I was like, oh God. Whoa. Anyway, by the end of the day, as some of you may have heard, I cycled home back to Clapham, and I was like, oh my God, I think I want to resign from Diageo. It never occurred to me that I'd leave the corporate world. I thought I was a corporate girl. And ever since then, Richard, that summer, you walked alongside me. You held my hand as I burst into tears on many occasions, questioning my sanity of leaving the corporate life. And then we hung out a lot in 2008. That was amazing and super helpful. And you were with me on the eve of the first School of Facilitation gathering in August 2014 as well. And that was the day that SOF was like metaphorically birthed, and you were at the birth. Ta-da! So thank you.
That workshop was called Seize the Day. I've just remembered.
Seize the Day.
And you certainly did
that. And Darren, hello, welcome.
Hello.
How do we know each other?
Do you know what? I was just thinking about when we met, because it was at the Constellation workshop we were doing in Salisbury, wasn't it? Which must have been a year, 18 months ago, something like that.
Even more.
Yeah.
Even more. So
yeah, maybe. And as a result of Rich, Rich was the introductor. So yeah, I think that's, and then been following what you've been doing with the School of Facilitation. I think it's really interesting and also lovely for us as sort of freelancers to have somewhere to refer to. It's a great community.
Today we're going to be talking about partnerships and the interesting dynamic of partnerships as freelancers, solopreneurs, people who own our own businesses. To help our audience, our listeners, how do you two know one another? How have you come to be together?
So I think, thinking back, I've been doing this since early 2017, and 2018, I became a mentor in the charity Help for Heroes, which a program that Rich created really for the charity. And so as a result, and I wanted to work with the charity for a while, and as a result, I met Rich on I think it was part of our group gatherings where we used to get mentors together and share experiences, sort of share practice, all that sort of stuff. and there was a connection definitely that we sort of got on really well. And then I became part of the facilitation team in Help Heroes, delivering the Pathfinder course and a number of others. And that's when I really started working with Rich. And I guess that's since 2019.
Yeah, but there was a, and then, or maybe we'll come to this, Kirsty, but COVID kind of accelerated our connection in the sense that, COVID was a different experience for so many people, but we worked out that he could cycle south from Salisbury, I could cycle north, and we could meet part way, legally when all that madness was happening, and just meet and have conversations. And so a lot of what we're about to talk about grew from that.
So the topic of partnerships, I think, is really interesting because and I have partnerships with people I work with as well. So it'll be good to throw that in the mix. So from your perspective, what does partnership mean?
For me, a lot of things make sense through metaphor, mythology, different modalities. And so I do, and even if they're cliches, so I do think life is a journey. And for me, it's important who the company that I keep on that journey. Sometimes I'm traveling by myself, sometimes I'm traveling with others. So whether that's intimate partnerships, friendships, and then professional partnerships. So for me, for me, partnering is walking a part of that path with others. Could be one other, several others, and I think then you can sort of layer in what's the reason, from where are you walking from and to, for how long, and what kind of journey is it. So you can start to layer it all in from there. But it's that, for me, it's that, and I like that it's the word the company when it comes to actually creating a sort of business product or a business itself. It's like, oh yeah, we're in each other's company. So it's that.
So I think it's important that we just help everyone understand how you and Darren are in partnership. So Darren, do you want to talk to how that is at this point in time for the two of you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's sort of, in many ways, it reflects how we worked with Help for Heroes, in that we are a group of individuals that come together to deliver something important. And that's the way it's evolved with me and Rich, where we've got a portfolio of work that we work on. I call it channels, different channels of work that we're working in, which are important of themselves. And at the same time, we have a shared interest in how we can help small, medium-sized businesses in the way that we want to help them. And it's how we come together as two individuals that then form a partnership, not a legal entity, not a business. It's a project. We call it the Sourcery Project, because it's us coming together to meet the demand of the people that we want to work with, so they have an ongoing experience with us, and balancing our sort of, if you like, our independence with our interdependence together.
So just for complete clarity, you both have your own setups, your own businesses. Mm-hmm. You both have your own clients that you work with or associate relationships. Mm-hmm. And there is another channel, as you called it, Darren, where there's the two of you coming together to work on projects with small, medium-sized enterprises. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Brilliant. So but what you are not, and this is what some people might be thinking, you're not a one business and in working together like co-founders or co-MDs.
Correct.
Yeah. We're co-founders of a project, and and there's layers underneath it. So yeah, but that's accurate.
And the reason we wanted to talk about that is I have noticed that this is quite a common way of working for people, like coming together, working with somebody else on a project, and having conversations with both of you, like and through my own experience, you sort of notice there's layers to this way of working, and there are boundaries, there's conversations, there's topics that we're all like questioning. So that's the reason why we wanted to come together today to talk about that, to say, right, how does this actually work?
And in so many different forms. I mean, we've just, so, you know, we've, like you said, Kirsty, you have different partnerships going on. And I was until a couple of years ago, I was in a 4-year project through an associate partner. So there were sort of 3 organizational partners and then freelancers associated with those organizations. I mean, we were a team of 10 that had to, you know, do different pieces of work at different times. So there was a sort of overarching partnership, and then the partnerships within the partnership.
My gosh.
And it can get quite complex, but actually it was such a beautiful experience because of the things that we learned and did, and with intention.
And that's what we want to discuss today, isn't it? It's like, what do we know about being in partnership with somebody else, and how do you navigate it? And I love, you've already said, like, the word intent and being intentional, and not leaving things to chance, and something might happen and we'll deal with it when it happens. But as many of us know, often if something is happening, it's not for a good reason, and often emotions are getting involved, potentially frustrations, irritations. I mean, the 3 of us know from the work we've done, as soon as we're in that space, we're not our best selves, and therefore the conversations are probably a little bit more tricky. So how about sharing some of your noticings of starting working in this way between the 2 of you? Like, what are some of the things that have been coming up as you've been navigating coming into partnership?
So do you mean sort of positive and negative broadly?
Yeah, like, just even like list some of the things that you've been talking about, and we can dive into each of them.
I noticed that it all started with having this common interest, as Darren said, and then there was this energy, and we just noticed we had energy for the stuff that we had common interest in. So that is both the starting point. It's also something that for me is like a compass bearing. It's like we keep coming back to it. So if there's a dip in energy, it's like, why are we doing this again? What's this about? And even if we go back and adjust that, fair enough. But that's the thing, is remembering why we're doing it in the first place, not just doing it because, I don't know, we were doing it yesterday. You know, it's keeping that energy alive is really important.
The intention behind it is really important, or the common intention. You know, the where I think we met, apart from a common set of values about, you know, doing things for the greater good. Really, given all the challenges in the world, I think if you layer it right up, you know, there's a common set of values from me and Rich around doing things that have an impact, that are greater than us, and will grow over time in the organisations we work with. So that's the common values there, and also valuing environment. So, you know, where we're working and how we're working. So working outdoors in nature is important to me and Rich. You know, and we in many ways we live our practice. So we've spent time, you know, walking, talking, camping, sitting around the fire, you know, experiencing the changes ourselves. So I think it's almost recognizing the commonality in our values, and then actually doing something with it, you know, and sort of repurposing that for ourselves and for the people we want to work with.
But I noticed, Darren, that if things become too transactional, or if we move into an area that, let's say, I'm less keen on or less good at, it is that original sort of, it's going back to those upper layers, if you like, Kirsty, that keep it going, that keep energizing it. I mean, we were both always interested in contribution, and then it was through the conversations, it's Darren was sort of going, yeah, and what's my legacy? You know, what's going to be the after effect of my contribution? And I was looking at prosperity, which is, you know, how do we flourish and support others to flourish? And both came to this, well, we can do more if we do it together. So the partnering was actually an organic evolution of the things that were important to us. And then what we're doing is we're taking our own medicine when we're working with our clients, because that's what we're encouraging in them.
And I think going back to your point earlier, Kirsty, about energy, I think that there is tapping into the energy. What's keeping us working together? We were talking about it the other day. How do we feel after we've come off a call together? Rich said he feels energized. I always feel like I've sort of a window's been opened that I wasn't expecting when I talked to Rich. It's like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, because he's bringing something, and I really value that, and I think that's also, it's recognizing where we have common capabilities, if you like, and capacities to do things, and also where we're not common, and that, I think that balance is really important, because you kind of see where the mix of the two can really be quite potent.
Oh my God, massively.
In the right way.
I'm very lucky. In the last 10 years, I call her my business wife, Sian Price, and we've worked on a lot of commercial projects together, which many people don't know I do. It's my secret sauce, because I'm a commercial person at heart. But Sian and I have worked with some great clients globally on commercial projects. And while both of us have the connection of understanding the commercial world, we do things differently. And she is amazing at doing detail. And those of you who know me, that just passes me by. She's really good at drawing up a plan. I appreciate a plan. Can I write a plan? No, but Sian can. She's great. And that has evolved over time, that acknowledgement. Have we ever explicitly called it out? No, if I think about it. But we now just naturally lean into taking different roles on a project, because we come together on these projects and we see them as isolated projects. And that has been really good. And we know where we have got the common factor as well, which really, really helps us. So what I'm hearing so far, we've got this, we've both got a passion for where it starts, legacy, bringing something to life that is more than just yourselves, and noticing you wanting to work with and support those small, medium-sized businesses. So that was sort of the starting point. And then you started to recognize, you've got the values in common, a set of intentions in common, and also that acknowledgement. I like that, like the capabilities, but also your differences. What else have you spoken about on your journey of working together that you think is important to have helped you lay the foundations for your partnership?
For me, it's we've talked, because I do this with clients as well. You can talk about, okay, this is how we're going to work together. This is our path to success, etc., etc. And I like to sort of lob in the question, okay, how would we mess it up? How would we not do that? How would we get in our own way? And to have that as a what's the word, preemptive conversation. Yeah. So that when, stuff does hit the proverbial fan, you can go, we've spoken about this. You know what I mean? You can, so but hopefully by being preemptive, it then doesn't happen. But then if it does happen, you've already spoken about it. So it's those kinds of things. And I think that also gives me a certain freedom, so we say, well, what if this doesn't work out? What if this doesn't work out? Rather than going, we must pressurize ourselves to make it work. That for me also frees up a certain energy. So that's one thing, talking about what could go wrong.
Yeah, I think the other thing that came to my mind when we were just talking about that, and Richard was talking about that was also using the processes that we are familiar with, that we work with clients with, on ourselves. So being really honest with ourselves and each other. I think, and I noticed, because we did it. We were camping out in the Dorset coast and going for a walk and doing a process there called Immunity to Change, and I really felt I was having to really get into the sort of, what am I really feeling about this, and be prepared to share it, even if it wasn't kind of the way I would have preferred to have presented it. It was like, well, either I'm going to be honest about this, or there's little point in doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that was also the theme of that that couple of days, which was, we know we get on, we know we've got similar values, we know we are friends, we know we're professionally, we're good at what we do. Are we actually going to get on and do something? It's like that tipping point, and we were quite explicit about that. And let's really talk about that, and then reflect on it, and then we decided, yeah, let's do it, and let's get into the time, and the commitment to actually doing something, bringing something to life, because it takes a lot more than just having a bright idea, doesn't it? It's like you have to actually commit to it. You have to go and visit places. You have to do research. You have to talk about commercials and all those sorts of things that are the layers that you mentioned underneath it.
That was an important moment, Darren. Really important, because we both, by doing that process, immunity to change, which is a core process that we also offer, because there's broadly speaking, it's identifying what you really want, and then going through these layers of, well, what are you doing that gets in the way that keeps you from that? What's your immunity to change? So having done that process, and really you have to sort of go through a few gritty levels, which is why doing it outdoors sort of helped. We can now refer to that, and it's like I often go, more often than I like actually, I go, oh look, I'm just about to slip into my immunity. But then it's like I can bring myself back, or Darren can just say, hey mate, did you notice? So yeah, it's so we're then able to sort of point out each other's blind spots if we can't see them, and then just get back on track.
So, question for you both. You've mentioned a couple of times there's some processes that you have used to help you discuss your partnership. Can you just name the topics that you've gone through? Is that feasible? Like, what have you done to help yourselves? What have you explored?
Well, it's ongoing. A couple of ones. I mean, we use Theory U almost every time we meet. It's, and behind the design, I mean, it's such a intuitively useful, tool both for clarity and deepening one's process.
So if you haven't come across Theory U, look it up. Otto Scharmer, very interesting set of concepts, and accessible. That's a whole other episode in itself, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole.
It is, and we will include, by the way, and we will just include in our meetups, especially, we'll include pauses, moments to stop, reflect, breathe, not spend so get out of the head into the heart, into the body. That's an important thing. We'll take a break and do some qigong if we have to, and just to get back out of our heads and into other senses. But we also, so Darren's got a profiling system called leadership development profile. Yeah, is that right? So he's run that on me, if you like, and then I know his Gene Keys profile, so I can speak to that one, which is one way of enabling you to spot where are your shadows, if you like, your sort of where you come from a more victim place, your gifts, which is where you come from a more creative place, and then your cities, which are almost like what's the highest possible embodiment, if you kept applying your gifts. And again, it's just useful to say, it's not about putting each other in boxes. I hate it. That's not what I use profiling systems for. But if it's used for orientation, just saying, here's a map of your awareness. And I guess, Darren, it's probably back the other way, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. The leadership development profile I use from Harthill, and it's a very useful way of understanding in yourself and in someone else how you're making meaning. How do you see the world? How does the world make sense to you? And particularly when you're in partnership, I think that's quite helpful, because if you're at a similar level, then you're tending to see and make meaning in a similar way, and I think that can be really helpful. And if you don't, if you're seeing things differently, then I think that can cause unnecessarily conflict.
Or at least you understand you're seeing it from a different perspective, and therefore you can just acknowledge it that way.
And it's a language. It's the language that it gives you. I think it's a map and a language. That's what's important, is that you're not struggling to describe. You've got terms you can use that I think are very helpful.
And again, Kirsty, this is not whether we use those tools or not with our clients. The intention is still the same. It's to enable them to map their own sort of consciousness, their own awareness, and what they want to do with how to create a common language and what they want to do with that.
So we've got immunities change, theory U, pauses, reflections, and breath work. Use of a profiling system. What else have you done to help you set up the partnership?
Well, it's interesting hearing you talk about planning, but a spreadsheet, Kirsty, a spreadsheet to put in numbers for, because, to run an event, because that's the other thing is there's co-facilitating a process, right? But there's also delivering an event. So having a spreadsheet that says this, this is how many people, these are the costs, these are the rates, etc., etc., etc. And I can't believe I'm saying that because that's not my strength.
I'm proud of you, Rich. Proud of you.
Thank you so much. I do value things like that. They're not my forte.
This might sound like a really obvious thing to say out loud to people, is have it in a shared drive so you can both access it at any time. So it's a live document. And that might sound like obvious to some people, but there have been times where I did not do that in partnerships, and therefore we ended up running off different documents. So definitely finding a way to share documentation so they are live is helpful. Before we move on, any other tools or techniques that you have used to help you set up your partnership?
I think that for me, some of the basics, like just listening, to understand where someone's coming from. Even for the basics like project names, it sounds so sort of superficial, and yet it's so important. And also giving into, you have to give a little, and sometimes we have to compromise, and remain flexible. Things don't have to be fixed. They are fixed at the moment because it's important to us and it works. It's necessary, and at the same time, it can be changed. I think
nice.
I think it's holding. I think a lot of what we do is holding these things lightly. You kind of know which way you're going, and at the same time you're open to flexing when you need to, and how you need to, and it's just constantly doing it. It's a bit like the sort of polarity of, right, we're in a business together, we're co-founders, we're partners, this is what we're doing, versus we're coming together to deliver a project of value for the clients we work with, and at the same time we've got other things that we're working on which are important because they bring more richness to what we're doing for our clients, and it's like balance. You have to balance those things constantly.
And actually, this brings me to another question of what are some of the trials, tribulations, and challenges that you are discovering as you work in this way?
I've already referred to my immunity to change, so I don't mind sharing that with people. So I'm naturally quite a big picture thinker, but I also have this weird inner sort of critic / perfectionist. And so what the process helped me identify was that if I can't see how to do a big thing well and know that it's going to succeed, then actually I can collapse on and go, oh, there's no point starting. So a trial and a tribulation would be if something becomes too big that the inertia kicks in, which may sound like a weird one. So and then therefore the antidote is to keep it small, and it helps having someone like Darren who's very good at mirroring things back to me and with a sort of arm around my shoulder, as well as a shove in the back if I need it. So I don't know if that gives you one. Yeah. My own, what would you call it? My own inner dynamic that can sometimes trip me up. So it always starts with self, to be honest.
Okay, so we've got like knowing our own behaviors to certain elements of a project. So for you, Rich, if it gets too big, inertia sets in. So at least Darren recognizes that and can call you out. What else have you both noticed as potential challenges, not necessarily that have happened, but you've talked about because you go, look, we just need to talk about this. Otherwise, when it happens, it might trip us up. I
think one of the ones is finance, is cash, because you have all the normal things that you need to do. You need to we need to reflect the project on things like websites, create things. We we have to go and do research, visit locations, sometimes invest in programs so we're experiencing something in the location that we're offering to clients. So there's lots of sort of investment that's going on, and I think if you're not clear about that, then it becomes either it's assumed or it becomes corrosive. So we have had a conversation that says, look, we've got two different entities, and if you find a client and you bring it to the project, then we'll run it through your business. If I find a client, we'll run it through our business, and we'll also ensure that you are recompensed for bringing that client. So it's that it's just being clear about the balance, and it's not strictly 50-50 every time, because there's been effort in different places, and I think it's easy for that to get forgotten, and just being clear about it and talking about it is important, so that it doesn't sit in the it's not in the background, and it's sort of, you might not realize it's corrosive for the other person, but it might be there for them, and unless you have the conversation about it, it could influence other decisions. You just don't know, do you? It's there.
What other agreements or what other things within the world of commercial and finance have you discussed? So you've said, like, if you bring the work in, Darren, you put it through your company. Richard, if you bring in the client, you put it through your company. What other conversations have you had around the numbers?
The one with relationship is not just who brings the client, but that bringing the client is in itself worth, rewarding. So then there is a proportion of the revenue goes to the person who brings the client. So you know what I mean? That's actually valued. It's not just, I've got a client, right, 50-50. It's like it's really what's the word? Can't think, but it's sort of layering the different commercial elements of how you run a client through the process.
Yeah, I do that. We do that. Sean and I definitely, we look at the project as a whole, because we play to our strengths in what we do, and there'll be some of the work that we do together, so we know that's a 50-50, but then there's sometimes she'll take the lead on one element and I'll take the lead on another element, and therefore this year, for example, we did a project and I did all the filming and editing with a videographer for a series of short videos, so I got paid for that element of the work, whereas Sean was busily writing detailed facilitator guides and PowerPoint slides, which I also was contributing to. So we'd worked out like what our time and effort for each of those elements were there and split it. So again, it wasn't pure 50-50. So we were paying each other for what we did.
I think what's important here is that the conversation, like Darren said, isn't assumed. It's not assumed. Even if you then go, we don't have to worry about that because it's fine. That we'll just, but at least it's been named and agreed.
Yeah.
It's one of the drawbacks, if you like, of having a portfolio of other interests, right? Is if we don't put time in the diary, it gets swallowed up by those other interests. So rhythm and routine is really important. Almost if when the time we book it, we don't know what we're going to talk about, but we book it in anyway, and so that at the very least it's a check-in. It's like, well, where are we up to? And have we moved forward? Have we slipped backwards? What's new in the meantime? And there's always it's always worthwhile. Sometimes you look at it and you go, well, we don't need that one because, we know when we're meeting up next. But if we don't, for me, if we don't have this regular rhythm, then we can lose momentum, especially for some of the reasons that I've already mentioned. So, and it is about momentum and rhythm for me. It's back to the journey, right? You want to keep moving forwards, even if it's a slow pace.
And also on time, you mentioned, I think it's true, like we all have our own entities and we have other projects or other clients that we're working with, is being very clear with the other person where our time is at a point in the year. So the other person isn't sitting there going, oh, Darren's not done anything recently. Like, I can't believe I haven't heard from him. Or Rich is really quiet. And there's an assumption that there is no love for the project that you're working on. Right? But in fact, for an instance, I know, Richard, you travel quite a bit with your work and you've been away, you've been delivering, you've been working. But I think that plays back to your point of carving out intentional time to come
Yes,
together and talk about the project / give time and dedication.
and also, Kirsty, because of the way we know each other, it's not just time around work. So, you know, it was important recently that Darren and his wife had a day off, and I remember, we needed to speak about something, and Darren was going, well, I don't want to do it on that day because I've got the time off. And I was like, no, that is sacred. That is just massive that you do that. So there's really, I know Darren's mentioned breathing a few times. There's allowing this whole project to breathe and notice that it's not just, a transactional sort of product of manufacturing. Do you know what I mean? It's so much more to it than that.
I've got a question. How did you decide that it would be whether you would have a legal entity or not a legal entity?
Yeah, how did we decide that?
And what have you decided?
Well, we've decided not to, and to pursue the project. I think in order to allow us the flexibility to do what we do, and I think it's all. I mean, for me, I think it's also something in the not conforming to what might be considered the norms. If we're working with clients that they're able to deal with the complexities that their business and their environment, markets, whatever it is, are sort of confronting them with, then we, in many ways, I think we need to test out different forms, and understand, like we're talking about this morning, the challenges of doing that, always with the client in mind. That's the other thing that's always on our mind, is that in working with us, the client must have trust that they understand how we're working and they're comfortable with that. Ultimately, they're still working with a legal entity. It's just, depending on how they come through to us, depends on which one they're working with.
And actually, at the end of the day, they probably don't care, if I'm very honest with you. It's we think they care, but honestly, they're more worried about us solving their problems and helping them do X, Y, or Z.
It's an invoice, isn't it?
It is.
I think that it does play into something we talked about the other day, which was ego with your business. If you're, and it also plays into what we talked about in terms of the level of human development that you're experiencing yourself. So if you're very captivated by your brand and growth, and that your intention is to get to a certain level at a certain time, I could imagine that not playing well in something that we're doing together, because there's a sort of mismatch. You almost need to be at the same level in order for it to rise at the same time in the same way. So that's why I think portfolio is important, because it means that we've got income from other sources, so that we can spend time on this. We're investing in this through time and other things. So it's having a sort of similar background and intention that supports the endeavor, and it's not the same for everyone. That's the other thing, is this might not be perfect for other people, and therefore they'll approach it in a different way, but we're approaching it in this way.
And do you think each time you get a new client within this project, you will sit down and have a conversation about how you're going to run that particular client, and review all the things that we've just spoken about?
Completely. I think there's something about having a certain consistency, so that there's certain things we know that works, so we're going to do that each time. I don't know. For example, we've mentioned it a few times. We know we want to run the bulk of what we do outdoors. Okay, so if a client turned around to us and said, "Well, we're not going outdoors because we want to be in a London hotel," I don't know, we haven't actually talked about this, but for me, I'd probably question, well, is that our kind of client? I'd probably refer them on to someone else. That's just off the top of my head, right? So there's certain things that we want to be consistent with, and then within that, it's, you know, there's flexing to the needs and the context. I think context is so important. You know, what's the current context for the client?
Yeah, and it's being clear about the project. You know, our Sourcery project is about working with clients in a particular way. You know, which has layers. You know, it means working outdoors. It might be working online at certain stages, and at the same time, if we've conducted a project with that client, and that client then wants to work with Rich on something else, that's fine. You know, it's like where are the sort of boundaries of the project almost. You know, and not being overly parochial about it. I think that's what's also important. I mean, we haven't had to deal with that, but you know, that's the other thing I think that's important is being able to flex in how we work with the client.
So if someone's listening to this conversation and they are stepping into a new partnership with someone, or they're considering going into partnership with someone, what advice would you give them at this time?
Well, obviously, it's going to depend on what they're like, but I would really, really, really listen to their own heart and their own gut, because I think lots of things can be shiny and attractive, and especially I think when I may be generalizing, well, I am generalizing here, that if you're freelance, if you're solo, you know, sometimes you want a bit of company. You know, you want to work. I love co-facilitating, for example. I just find it better for me, better for them, better for the client as well. Better, you know, higher quality, higher value. But you know, if I went into a partnership just because I was feeling a bit sorry for myself, do you know what I mean? That wouldn't be a good reason. Or if it was like, oh, you know, my revenue streams over here are a bit low, so I need this one to really work. Do you know what I mean? So it's not going into it from a place of constriction and constraint. You know, but is this actually expansive? Is this going to help me express more of who I am and what I have to offer to the clients? You know, is it something that enhances me and my offer? Then do it. I mean, it's almost like, why wouldn't you? When we were, you know, I come back to that thing about prosperity. I think prosperity is very often rooted in doing things with people that you enjoy doing things with. I mean, and prosperity not as a financial reward, as a kind of reward of being in human relationship.
Nice.
So that's does it enhance you? Is what I would say.
What is it for you, Darren?
I think I think time is important. You know, you can't having time with someone to really get to know them, and I think also supporting Rich's point, which is really appreciating where your energy is for the project and what your intentions are, and being brutally honest with yourself about that. Because if you're not, I think that's where you can start to kind of go off track.
Just because we're in partnership doesn't mean we're the only people that we can only speak to each other. I think it's important to have, you know, to still have your own mentors, supervisors, you know, without breaking any confidentiality you have with your partner, for example. So I know for me that it's important that, you know, Darren's supported by Claire and I'm supported by Nikki, both of whom have lots of fantastic ideas from their own sort of commercial backgrounds, actually. But you know what I mean? It's almost like, yes, okay, we're the ones focusing on it, but we've also got these other layers of support around us. I think that's quite important as well.
Nice. Okay, thank you. So some quick fire questions for you both.
Okay.
Who do you follow in social media land that you think others should too?
Oh, blimey. Okay, I'll go Positive News UK.
Thank you.
On Instagram. That's not a facilitation related one. That's just a general.
Yeah, no, I have to say I do like The Rest is Politics and The Rest is Politics Leading. I love that podcast. Like many people, I think.
Is that the Alistair Campbell one?
Yeah, and the Leading one's particularly interesting because of the sorts of characters they get on and the perspectives they bring.
Oh, Kirsty, I've got to mention as well, because we actually we haven't done this yet, but we're thinking of using it as almost like preparation material for clients, is John Richardson and the Future Noughts.
You got me onto that podcast. It's awesome.
I love it.
During COVID, I used to go for my walks and listen to that and just be like, wow. Yeah,
It's
definitely recommend that.
Good. So good.
John Richardson and the Future Noughts.
I've got another one. Sorry. Before I just want to do a shout out to Hearthill. I think they're a lovely bunch of people. Yeah, David Rook, who actually was part of the original research team decades ago that created the action logic profiles. They do regular sort of community sessions, and they're really useful, particularly from a leadership development perspective.
Of course, everyone should follow School of Facilitation. Of course.
Obs. Books. What books do you recommend to people? Have you got a book at the moment that you just get giddy about and tell others to read it?
Mastering Leadership.
By whom?
It is, good question, and Robert Anderson and William Adams.
Thank you. How have you invested in yourself or your partnership to support you in moving forward?
I'd say time and living our own process. Really, it's not just talking a good game; it's actually doing it, going out and experiencing it.
Nice. I would add that I went to a retreat at one of the venues, probably the main venue that we want to use, called Campwell Woods, just outside Bath. And so I went and participated in a men's retreat there. So got to it. Don't think you can beat experiencing a venue. You can look at it and you can go, well, that looks like, we'd already been around to visit it, but it's different when you actually.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been on a retreat in the woods that you're mentioning, Campwell. If anyone's listening, go Google awesome. Campwell. It's an amazing experience.
They're brilliant, and they're really living they're really embodying what they stand for do. As well.
Definitely. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me today to talk about partnerships and doing it differently. I really appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Kirsty.
Thank you, Kirsty. Yeah, great fun.